for 2027 presidential candidacy, right? You'll tell us why way too early. People are saying, oh, it is way too early. He says, no, it's not. Yeah, so you will tell us why he's actually, yes, or he's actually now, yes, yeah, as they always say, that thrown the gauntlets, yeah, so that we'll hear from him as well. And also holding court with Kiprito Arap-Kirwa, who is a governance and policy analyst, and Professor Fred Ogola, who is an economist and governance and policy analyst as well. And by the way, he's launched his book, just reminded me, right? We shall also be just teasing out some of the things in his book, just briefly, just taking a cursory look at it. We're looking at a raft of issues that has happened this week so far, as we're winding up the week. And of course, here on Wongozo today, we try to keep them honest. And one of the issues as well, before we buckle down to the poster pay and the workers who are also decrying the fact they haven't been paid for long, is raising a broader discussion on the issues of parastatals. And some of these parastatals that we know are bound to or touted to be moribund, like the Postal Corporation itself, since they unbundled from the Kenya Ports and Telecommunications Authority. We have the issue of the Kenya National Trading Corporation, that used to be a moribund corporation, but right now has been revived, and also it's under the radar of the EACC because of the edible oil scandals, where we saw the president asking that the investigative body, EACC, to try and probe what really happened with the edible oils imports. And now we are stuck up with metrics and metrics of tons of edible oils that are of poor quality and cannot be absorbed in the market. And 6 billion shillings went down the tubes. Someone actually also raked in, or some clammy fingers took 3 billion shillings from that, including a CS. Some of these corporations, do we need 111 billion shillings to save these parastatals? Do they also have duplicitous work or job description that they're doing, so to speak, as well? But I also wanted to raise the issue that has been a very catnip issue within the Senate yesterday, and this is regarding how Kenyans are treated at the JKIA by the KRA officials. And it seems now they're going to review this, looking at what other publications are indicating as well. But I just wanted to read one of a very telling situation that really happened with this. And it's been doing rounds. I cannot prove the authenticity of it as well, but it's just depicting what really says of it. I got it from a credible source, so I trust it. It says, tourist harassed last night at JKIA. And this, he says, that we say we are trying to promote Kenya as a wedding destination, well, under the umbrella of tourism. This is a total farce. Our clients arrived last night from the US. There are US citizens here for their destination wedding. As they were exiting their arrivals, the bride-to-be was asked to open her suitcase, which she duly did. This was the beginning of the nightmare. They were rudely told that her wedding dress was of commercial value and they must pay duty on it. They showed their passports and tickets that they were here for their wedding and will be flying back. The custom officials harassed and intimidated them that the wedding dress was of commercial value locally and must, wait for it, they must pay $2,000. They didn't have the money and were forced to leave it behind. The couple has not slept and are highly traumatized by the terrible experience in the hands of our customs. Question is here. Why are we bothering in marketing Kenya as a wedding or a tourism destination? That's the way we put it. The groom, who is a Caucasian, was not even asked to show his suit. Right, it continues. I can't read the rest of the details, but it paints a picture of where we are at with this as well. And this has been now a subject that is in Parliament right now. We can just briefly talk about it. I can see the editorial cartoons that even you need to be aware that the taxes today in Nairobi, as Stano has taken it here, if you may take it in full, he says this is Nairobi in broad daylight, right? Your parking fees is rising from 200 to 300 shillings. We were talking about also e-citizen being probed by the KRA officials to try and see your transaction. I think that was also a discussion that we had here yesterday. Where is a breach also of my data, where we have KRA officials are also looming over the e-citizen to try and mine data so that they may know or get details about you and your whereabouts regarding some of transactions that you do or businesses that you run. Let's just begin from there with this. I found it to be very telling and very disturbing, really disconcerting. I don't know.
Yeah, Dibal, the competition today in the world is with which you can do business within a country. And you heard the other day Tanzania has overtaken Kenya. You can do business quickly and with ease in Tanzania than you would be able to do the same in Kenya. This is a challenge, and it is not just confined to the government itself. It is confined to all the agencies of government that when you are applying for a license, they say it is E. And yet you will realize that some of the companies, you need to apply for about 17 licenses to achieve the same product. And at every stage, they create a problem. And at times, there is a colleague who was complaining that for the last 3 years, he's not been able to get through with the license. And if we went to Tanzania today, possibly within 3 months, you'll be able to get the license and you'll be operating. Now, when you create all these bottlenecks, we are also reducing the capacity of government to collect revenue, because government collects revenue when somebody finds it easy to be able to file the returns and pay, and they find friendly people at the desk. You know, I look at it that some parastatals or even some organizations, they spend a lot of money on advertising. But when you go to the reception, the kind of reception they give you, you don't want to go back there. Then why did you have to spend a lot of money on advertising? The president has done a lot trying to raise awareness that Kenya is a destination for 1, 2, 3, but the very work of its own regime does not seem to reflect that. Finally, on that particular issue, the new boys in town about collection of revenue, I don't think they even understand what revenue is all about, because for the last 5 months, they have been collecting less than they were collecting last year without the conditions that they are now meeting on us. Every month they have been collecting less, and yet there are many taxation measures that they are put in place. I think the regime needs to rethink about the strategy of collecting of revenue. Otherwise, we are likely to run into trouble.
Right. Kigame.
I don't think Kenyans are unwilling to pay taxes. But you cannot tax a nation into prosperity. Nowhere. Show me one country where people have been taxed in order to solve an economic problem. And the second thing is that...
Allow me just to butt in, Kigame, and sort out your mic a bit. So I think it's gone off something erratic with it. As I try and sort it out, in the meanwhile, we can just be listening from Professor Ogola.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Diba. I think that
let me jump you. I think it should be Professor Gitile Daituli.
Okay.
He's been a bit of mealy-mouthed here, so yeah.
Yes, I think what's happening to Kenya is an example of how not run a government. Tourism is one of the leading earners of foreign exchange for Kenya. So the last thing you want to hear is incompetent people being hired and deployed to ports of entry who simply have no clue what they are supposed to do. Because I can tell you, if you do an investigation, these are not professional workers at the airport. Whether in customs, these are probably people who have been deployed there, and then they have this idea that the government is collecting taxes, and then they're going to arresting people who they should not be harassing. Number two, I have no idea the kind of economist the president is having around him. Either he's not listening to them, or they have no clue what is supposed to be done. The moment you raise taxes beyond a certain level, you don't need a rocket scientist to tell you that revenue will fall. Because there are two things which happens in taxation. There are two competing things. There was what we call arithmetic, and there's what is called economics. So once you raise taxes, in the short term, arithmetically, you may actually collect more money. But the economic, people already take measures to avoid paying. Ruben was not exactly right. Because people take measures, practical measures to avoid now the tax regime entirely. Because they see it as unreasonable. Okay? So what happens is the investment now, which is supposed to expand the tax base, suffers. And you progressively collect less money. You see, at this age right now, the interest, the bank, the government is selling treasury bills at 17.5. So why won't you, if you have 10 million and you want to open a business?
The highest in the history of this country.
Yes. But if you want to open a business today, you will not open the business. You will just buy the treasury bills because you don't get 17 million per year. If you have your 10 million right now. So the planning, the economics, it's very hard to understand what these people are doing. Now, you also see that there is an attempt to run away from the law, which also could inform the potential investors to be cautious about going into a country where law won't matter. If you look even in this debate you're having here on Parastatal, and now the CEOs and the board, they're supposed to join parties. That is contrary to Article 17, is about Article 2.
We'll come to it.
So what I'm saying here is when you put all these things together, is that we have a bus and a driver, and the bus is going terribly downhill. Okay, people are simply waiting for a crash, and it's very hard to predict now which direction or what time that crash may happen.
Right. Let me go back to Ruben Kigame and come to you, Prof.
Yeah, I was saying you cannot tax a nation. Let me put it differently. You cannot overtax a nation into prosperity. Every time you make taxes punitive and you make people realize that all you want is to take and take and take and take without showing what the taxes are doing, what is going to happen is they will evade paying taxes. In fact, for example, instead of bringing your goods through Mombasa or JKIA, you will find all the panya routes to bring your products in so that you can survive. It's really about just staying afloat. But to hitchhike on what has happened at JKIA, traveling in the US, which is one of the most developed countries, you don't experience those kinds of harassments. All they need, and it's all in the system, that these goods will be charged this particular kind of tax. And it is all on paper. You actually can find that information before you go there. Now, what has happened is that our country has lost the human element when it comes to dealing with its people. I think it's now in the public domain what Nyakango was trying to bring out, that we are looking for solutions in the wrong places when we have already mismanaged. So, for example, it's not like we are not collecting or we are unwilling to collect. It's that when we collect and when we borrow in particular, you cannot track what is borrowed to a project. So we are looking in the wrong place for recovery. We should be looking at who looted what. This money was meant for, the health sector, but KEMSA was disbanded because somebody was culpable. Why are they still unable? Why are we still unable to collect that money? We keep talking about this thing called Eurobond, and Eurobond 1, Eurobond 2. It's become a password. It was a loot. We lost money as Kenyans, and we're having to pay for what we did not spend. So all these offshore hideouts and people looting from the economy and then having us to pay through our nose, through a KRA that is acting like a police state. We are going the wrong direction. we should go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, how do we raise revenue? First of all, seal off the loopholes. Stop the hemorrhage. Because that's all this entrepreneurship, everything. In fact, when you lose trust in a government, anything is suspect. Even if you say, let's do this, you don't trust because you have not accounted for what happened yesterday.
Right, indeed. Let's plug the loopholes. And one of the loopholes that we're talking about also is the fact that we know the per diems. There's a report that is coming from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. I was trying to get the list of these parastatals and how also they dish out these per diems. Listing Singapore as one of the countries, when you go there, you get the highest per diem, at least almost 200,000 shillings every day. And you can now subject that to 156 exchange rate of US dollars. So this is where, some of these parastatals, chiefs, they go. And now we have a report that the allowances for public servants is fueling corruption. That is from the Kenya Human Rights Commission. And we should be looking at this. I think the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has been spotlighting on what is happening with some of these allowances. That some of the officers, even in government, this is where they actually get their gross pay, so to speak, from the allowances itself. How then do we're talking about a wage bill that is so bloated in this country, and wasting it through some of its unwarranted travels. We've seen lately some of the figures, eye-popping figures being splashed here in the media, where, from the executive, the travel where you have to pare down and say, now I'm actually cutting back by 500 million shillings so that will also go to other other uses where we can actually serve even the people who are other able as well. Could we just discuss the pilfering and the wastage that comes with it when you're talking about plugging the holes? Can we hear from Professor Ogola?
Yeah, first of all, Deval, I will tell you that our politicians, when they are campaigning, they benchmark with Singapore, Japan, Korea, but immediately they take office, they start benchmarking with the failed states or near failed states in Africa. Like you heard during the campaign, both Raila Odinga and William Ruto were talking about the Asian tigers, how they can take us there. But now when fuel prices getting bad, they said, we are actually not very bad like Tanzania, or we are just not like DRC. When the cost of unga was affecting people, they started comparing us with these other states. And I want to highlight the issue which you said before, and I missed that point on the issue of this airport thing. And I was trying to say there that the ease of doing business in Kenya is only better than Juba in the whole of Eastern African region. Juba is the youngest state in Africa, and that's the only state we are beating. It baffles me. So all these things we are seeing here, like when I talk about the issue of Singapore, people need to know why Singapore it is where it is. Singapore have the lowest taxes in the world and the lowest government spending in the world. Simple. If you want to run this country as an economist, you just need to lower the taxes and lower the government spending.
Yes.
And once you lower the government spend, you'll have no problem. Now you go to the issue of per diem, Deval.
Yes.
I've trained.
Can I just set it into, because I got it, I think it was the point. Yeah, this is where it was. Just to give you a snippet of what they're saying so that you can broaden your understanding, even to inform your discussion. That in the Business Daily today, it says the senior government officials are raking in nearly 200,000 shillings a day on official foreign travel in some selected cities, pointing to the heavy burden these trips are having on taxpayer. The latest review of allowances by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission shows that assignments to Singapore attract the highest per diem of 194,550 per day for public officers in top management, board level, and policy making. And they've given you an illustration here with the breakdown of the countries itemized, from Singapore, going to Iraq, Kuwait, Japan, some of these countries I can't even pronounce here. Liechtenstein, and Switzerland, Israel, Monaco, Lebanon, Suriname or Suriname, right?
Yes, Caribbean.
It's a Caribbean island, and you can see the way it's been depicted rightly from Singapore, 194,000 shillings, all the way down to Suriname, 158,850, and that has been the bulk until the bulk of the cost the taxpayer had to pay for these public servants. Some of these trips, we wonder what is the report, what discernible difference do they make at the end of the day. But this is where they have actually been plugging in to rake in a lot of money. And that's why everyone is gagging for this particular trips. Well, I was just sitting as
that's important. Actually,
as a segue for you to get where I'm really coming from with this discussion.
You know, Debal, I've trained more than 600 boards. And when I was an academic director in Strathmore Business School, if you want to attract more people for any board training, take them to the countries or the counties where the allowances are highest. And also, for example, for women serving in the board, if you take them to places where there's also good shopping, that will work. And also, to make jokes here, Morocco is also doing very well for men, because in Morocco, I'm sure you know that the allowance is very high, and also Morocco, there's a very good social life there. So there are so many things that are happening in this country that should just end. It's unfortunate that Singapore, someone sat down and came up with how to price this per diem depending on different regions. It was a strategy that someone, and the one who drafted, Kenyans drafted. It's not Singapore that says that when you come here you have to pay X. It's Kenyans who sat down in Nairobi here and came with those papers. So these are scams we have in this country. Do you know that government does training more than anything else? And they do a lot of capacity building. But my question is, why don't we see service delivery growing at the rate of those training? If at all, after the training, we can see Kenyans can access better goods of life. They are being trained. Those, like, for example, the Parastatal, like Telposta, that now is having challenges, like the telecommunication, the GPO. Why are they being trained a lot? And the service delivery is a problem. No one can come in innovation to serve that organization. So,
Prof, I hate to interrupt, but if you don't hire trained people, then you will spend a lot of money training them. And even some of them pseudo trainings, because you want to make money by taking them to Dubai or Singapore. So instead of taking you, for example, as an economist, you hire somebody who is not an economist. Then you spend money training them. That is insanity.
Yeah, by the way, even if you leave that alone, these people, by the way, Kigame, they are not that they are not incompetent. Government hires very competent people. I'm sure, Senior Kira, when you're in the ministry, you had very competent people hired. They are being trained, but they're not allowed to work. It's like when I was in Uganda, Museveni would hire the UD, is it UD? It's called what? The military called what?
What?
The military for you is called
NRM.
Yeah, he would hire them, take them to northeastern, the northern part of Uganda, and they are told, don't shoot anyone. So you have a gun, you have the training, but don't use your gun, because it was important that war to continue so that they continue getting funding. So some of these things are just scams. So you are training somebody, but you cannot allow them. I've been training, I tell the professor, I will like what you are saying. But do you know, if I do this in my place of work, I'll be fired. Do you know, in government, you can spend so much money on processes, and that processes, system, structures are more important than delivery. If you save government money, but don't follow certain things, you'll be arrested. But if you waste government money through these well-choreographed processes to waste government money, then you'll be a hero. And in government is the place where you can be promoted for doing nothing. But for those who try to do something, you can risk and actually lose even your positions. And so many of these officers, I told you, when you are being trained and you have competence, and you cannot be given a working environment to enjoy that your competence in your service is a very big joke. According to me, there is a need for public sector reforms. In fact, yesterday when I was doing my book launch, I said that I even repeated here, just to put everybody's salary under Public Service Commission to regulate all these things, these per diems and allowances, to be completely streamlined so that not everybody is an employer. Public Service Commission should hire everybody and pay their salaries and come and all equalization there and ensure that the way per diems are given, allowance has been given and the rest is done. I also remember the government of Kenya, this Kenya Kwanza government proposed that they are going to pay taxes on their per diems and allowances. I don't know where that's gone, but what's the need of even doing that? So the government is full of giving us a lot of duplication. And I also want to highlight the issue of tourism, because you mentioned the airport thing. Do you know the government spent 41.9 billion shillings to boost tourism? And if you spend that money to boost tourism, and you cannot be able to allow tourism to thrive, it's a waste of time. So when I was doing some work with these parastatals, I asked the guys of Kenya Tourism Board, you are receiving all this money. What is it that you are bringing back? Then they told me, we separate tourism from the demand side and supply side. That if at all that for us we are promoting tourism so the people can come. But somebody has to work on the supply side that can receive tourists. For example, when a tourist comes here in Kenya, tell me whether there's any infrastructure even to spend money here. Go to a place like New York. There's every infrastructure that you spend every coin. If you go to places like Barcelona, which are well visited, those are places are well visited. Like, do you know why New York and Barcelona are among the highest visited cities? Because they have a lot of public space. In Kenya, whenever you walk in CBD, you are interfering with somebody. Yeah. But in UK, in London, they have created a lot of public space where tourists can walk, buy food here, ensure the citizens of that country make money. New York has one of the largest public spaces if you go there. And then those public spaces, there's avenues on which people spend money. For us here, you come, but after you have come, you can be holed up in the hotel. Tourists are just watching TV on the hotel. They are not being told you are just a flight away from Mombasa. They can't be told there is National Park. I'm just looking at just the whole thing about the vision for the country. So the worst case, the issue of the cost of running government, we have illegal debt. If someone would put me in a position, for example, Bwana Kigame, I would declare some part of the Kenyan debt illegal, because if you pay a debt that money didn't come to Kenya, you borrowed it from somewhere, then you left in Dubai or somewhere else, then you come to the country, then tell the country to cough the money they didn't swallow. I'm telling you, vomit what you didn't swallow. Is it possible to vomit what you didn't swallow? Right. So according to me, the president should just tell us that money was not brought in this country that was borrowed from Eurobond. In fact, there is no common mwananchi who understands Eurobond. And they have done that intentionally so that people see this is very complex.
Right.
And to end it, the problem for Kenya is not as complex as we are being told it is. It's as simple as just adding 1 + 1. It's just that there's no goodwill to do it.
There is a heist.
I want to come on this
on the per diem issue, sir.
I think the question we are not asking is what is the value of those trips. That we have a system which allows you, if you are CEO, or to organize your own trip for the sake of getting money. There is no value coming back, because we are there to be value coming back. This thing, the issue will not even arise. So, in short, we just need a Magufuli here. What Magufuli did when he came to power, he abolished all those things. He said that we hired you because you are sufficiently educated and you can do your job well. The civil service hated him. But within 2.5 years, he had fixed the Tanzanian economy from direction it was going. Now, the other thing I want to comment is debt. There are 2 types of debt my friend here was talking about. There is what is called the sovereign debt, and there is what is called the regime debt. So what he is suggesting is that the government can legitimately refuse to pay a regime debt, because the regime debt is supposed to die with the regime. Now, what makes the difference? The sovereign debt that we cannot avoid paying is the money came. The contract was evaluated by Parliament, was approved by Parliament, and the money hit the exchequer and was appropriated by Parliament. That is sovereign. That we must pay. Now, the money, the borrowing, which has never been approved by Parliament, that the money never came to a shaker, the money was never appropriated by Parliament, is a regime debt, and they ought to die with that regime. So some of the discussions we're having is simply because, you see, people may think that we have a different government. We don't have a different government. This is in Jubilee phase 2. And it is in Jubilee that was borrowing this money. So you see, optimistically, which I really admire, people may think that this is a different government and therefore the president should not pay this debt or that one. This is a continuation of the Jubilee.
Where they should be granted a 10 million shillings car grant that was stopped by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. First of all, why is there a sense of entitlement that really comes with the judges? There's a sense of entitlement that once you're a judge in this country, or you're in that particular fraternity of lawyers, a judge or the law, I mean, you should be treated so with a preferential treatment. It's like you're a barber scissors.
The entitlement,
the entitlement that really goes with it, the perks that really goes with it. Maybe we should discuss this. Are they highly overrated?
That feeling, that thinking is not just the judges. It's anybody who goes into authority, into government.
I don't want to generalize. I've just asked about the judges.
Yeah.
So can we just discuss the judges and not overgeneralize the whole issue? Let's begin with Kipruto Arap Kirwa. Well, do you get that sense? In this country, I get a sense that there is such a halo that is around our judges.
Every elite group considers itself a very important institution. I remember the professors in various universities, they got the duty-free vehicles before us, members of parliament. And therefore, they were feeling they were a privileged group. Subsequent to that, of course, there was the duty-free that you are given. Later on, it was appropriated in the budget for every department, that if you import a car as a member of parliament today, there is a certain component that will be paid for by the institution under which you are operating. But this elite kind of attitude is something that is destroying our body politic, in the sense that all issues of misgovernance start by creating those elite groups. I would have expected that any person, and when you go to America, because we keep on referring to it, any member of the Senate, any member of the Congress, when they travel, they don't travel business class. Here in Kenya, if you are a minister, you travel first class. And this therefore means we start by segregating individuals from the beginning. The second issue is this issue of allowances. I do know there was a government operating in this town, is that any officer going out of the country must get express permission from the office of the president, even ministers. And therefore, for somebody to go to Singapore, to go to Dubai, to go to all these places, means there is some laxity somewhere. Somebody is not doing his job. Because if it is benchmarking, must you travel to that country? There is so much information today. If you wanted to know what's happening in Dubai, you'll be able to know without you even taking a flight. So all these issues is a way of creating some pilferage. Really, if you have to take people for a retreat, even if it is for 1 week, you will not spend 200,000 per head. But if it is per diem is 200,000, as it is indicated, it seems there is a problem somewhere. Why must you go to Singapore? Why must you go to Dubai?
Right.
Because even when I saw the judges in Dubai, I said, what is so unique about Dubai? Does it have any different jurisdiction that they need to do simulations in Dubai that they cannot do in River Road or any other part of this country? So it is something that I've always referred to. When bad manners visits in a town, all good manners runs away. So this is just a pervasive behavior that people are almost thinking that public resources are anybody's resources. We are supposed to be jealous about what belongs to the public, because what belongs to the public is ours. What is private, you can do whatever you want to do. You can spend a billion every day in your private capacity. But when you are a public servant, you must take care of the public resources.
Indeed. And of course, also following with this, there's this report by the Kenya Human Rights Commission that I was talking about. You can actually read the rest of it inside the Star today, where they say high allowances paid to senior public servants have made the government a lucrative and a preferred employer. Findings of a study by Kenya Human Rights Commission show, the findings released on Thursday at Nairobi Hotel showed the government being a preferred employer by many candidates has created a loophole for exacerbating corruption. Quote unquote, the findings of the study show that up to 70% of gross public servants' pay comes from allowances. KHRC said the absence of a policy framework to guide the management of allowances has given room for public institutions to pay stipends in an uncontrolled manner, leading to disparities in eligibility, justification, modes, and rates. The study also observed that whereas it is difficult to increase basic salaries due to the effect on other sectors and pensions, public service employers introduce allowances as an alternative method of employee compensation. Consequently, there has been a rise in expenditure on allowances, hence affecting the public service wage bill. Kenya Human Rights Commission released a report after surveying the independence of constitutional commissions and independent officers. Kagame, you want to comment on this briefly so that we can actually also just dovetail the discussion with Kenya Postal Corporation and the Parastatals, and why the government also is seeking 111 billion shillings to bail them out?
What we lack, Dibal, is the will to do government right. So as a result of doing business with the lives of Kenyans, then government attracts all these crooks that are wanting to trade with us and with our futures. When it comes to services, it is clear that a leaner government, less spending in government would result to more revenue, more ability to manage as a country. But we have leaders that don't want to do that. We have all the answers to a lot of our economic problems. We have expert papers all over the place. But government attracts all the wrong characters. There is no justification whatsoever for all the, is it 38 trips that the president has made in 1 year? There is no justification, legal justification for taking judges to Dubai, because there is no legal value to it. If you are taking fishermen to Kisumu or the Indian Ocean, then it makes sense. But a lot of what is being done in the name of learning and training and all, it's really looting. But I will give you a personal example, Dibal, to tell you that when you throw out values from government and from public life, you become valueless. As in, not valueless without values, but you become worthless as a society. I want to use my own personal example as someone living with disability. I have a right to be exempted from a number of services. I can actually apply. So why is it I'm not importing all these cars with, because of a loophole in the law or a loophole in the provisions? It's because there's something called self-control. The fact that there is a provision, you don't have to abuse it. So if there is provision that you can, travel, why would you travel when you can make a Zoom call? So we've come to a point where we are hungry to spend, not to serve. And until we have people in government that, think values, then government will always attract the highest bidders and the greatest businessmen.
Mm-hmm. Well, the government just launched the Open University that is meant to be virtually virtual, so to speak, entirely virtual. If you have an attempt to have all your curricula and execute your your training of students online. Why can't we go that way that we're talking about? Why can't we have a Zoom call? If we are really indeed want to pare down on expenditure, what did COVID-19 pandemic taught us regarding our expenditure? We never had these travelings. The court cases were held virtually. Why can't the trainings be done virtually? People are earning their degrees online nowadays. Can we, is it necessary to have an in-person meeting or in-person training here? How, again, are we utilizing our assets here? Asset utilization, we have training, Kenya School of Government, the judiciary, they have also their institutes as well where they need to train the judges, they need to train the judicial officers as well. The parliamentarians, they have their training institutes at Parkland. Some of them, the legislators have been here. They've never even gone to that particular training institute. In the entire of their...
There's another one in Karen.
That one is the one I'm talking about is in Karen. They don't even know that they have an institute in Karen. So when it comes to asset sweating and utilization in this country, we are crying we don't have money. The workers cannot be paid for 5 good months, but the wastage is just despicable.
Deba, let me just add, because I've been in this training sector for long, and there are so many things I've seen, even, forget about even training, meetings. Government officials sit down and come up with the best way to earn money from the exchequer. For example, I'm sure, Senior, being a minister before, you know that when government body is having a meeting and the meeting don't take place, there's a way still people earn sitting allowances, isn't it? And they put it clear. For example, if we're supposed to have a board meeting and there is no quorum, just by having minutes that there was no quorum, those who attended that meeting get allowances. So can you tell me if there's a way you can manufacture nano quorum to earn allowances? If you can earn money by creating an environment where there's a quorum, there's a meeting, they say this is a meeting, it took place, but there was no quorum to make decisions, and therefore they are entitled to their sitting allowances. And it's there in the statutes. I used to tell them, excuse me, of course I know I'm training you in compliance, but I know very well this is wrong. The other ways you can do that is that the company secretary will write minutes saying that board meeting took place at this time, the chair appeared, and having no quorum, the meeting ended without having made decisions. But because you attended the meeting and there's minutes, so long as there is minute being written that there was no quorum, the meeting took place. So the members are entitled to allowance. The other thing is that they restrict board meeting to certain hours. They say if the board meeting was supposed to take 2 hours, then they say, Chair, this board meeting needs to end, or we pass a minute that we are now having another meeting on top of that meeting. It means that if this board meeting was to take 2 hours, that's a time for a board meeting, they'll push the agenda that let us adjourn this meeting and have another board meeting, but actually we can have it today, so that we have sitting allowance for 2 meetings in 1 day. So the thuggery and the theft in the public sector is rotten. We just need somebody on the top. But you see, unfortunately, Debal, let us not blame these government officials. Let us blame their boss. The current president, the deputy president, and all these guys sitting in the cabinet, are they the best example for these people we're blaming these people down here? If the top already is rotten, and that's why I'm telling people that if we cannot decommercialize and decriminalize electoral process where someone comes to office funded by friends. Now when you fund a minister funds a president to become president, he controls the ministry. Yeah. How does he do it? He has to create people inside this ministry to come and earn these allowances. So they have to be allowed to go to Dubai. That's how you earn your money. So the whole process begins by who is the leader. And as far as we put money first, leadership becomes agenda number 10. When leadership becomes agenda number 1, there will be no problem. So for me, I don't blame these people. I even blame Kenyans. If you, Kigami, now you want to become president, how much money will you spend to become president? So I've been so parliamentarian passing a bill in parliament that to campaign for governor, for example, of Turkana, because it's very dispersed and very bad infrastructure, you are capped at 300 million shillings for campaign now. If you have campaigned using 300 million shillings, and this is passed in parliament in daylight,
Bro.
if you have campaigned with 300 million shillings, tell me whether a governor's salary in a term of 5 years should earn that money. So for me,
Duba wanted to know why are we doing all the things you just said that
we are doing it because of
that's-
how somebody gets to office.
Wow,
If you
yes.
become,
but I think, Prof, if you allow, I think there's a bigger reason why we are doing that.
yes,
And the bigger reason is that we see a government as a tool to exploit the people of Kenya, not as a tool to deliver service. You see, from the colonial government for 70 years, their job was to exploit us, so they did that without conscience. So when we came in, the last 60 years, we have done the same thing without conscience. And that is why you see being a bond, being a share is actually a reward system. That's the one he's explaining here. It's a reward system for what? To exactly exploit. So we will change Dubao from that modus operandi when we take public service as actually public service, but not a means for self-aggrandizement.
Yeah.
That philosophy of self-aggrandizement, we carried it from colonialists who had no reason to serve us. Now we also, when we took over, we decided also we have no reason to serve the people of Kenya. We must take that opportunity to serve ourselves once we get it.
actually, I would like you to use the word not exploit, because exploit can be positive.
Right.
Extortion. This is extortion.
Thank you. Well, let's hear from Kirwa. You mentioned that, of course, with the per diems and the sitting allowance as well. I was also just holding court with one of an ex-county officer that she maybe went through the frustrations of, just the height of corruption in the counties. That as an officer, she was told to hire ghost workers in her docket, so that some monies actually should be flowing through her docket as well, and also put up events that were not there. So you find that you say that there was an event, and then you'll bring. So she even had to just talk to some of her friends to come as figures, so that you can see there is actually some people who have been hired within that particular department. And this is the deception that you're talking about. Where we extort Kenyans. We think that when we come to these public offices, will be a conduit for us to get rich quickly. We come to these offices because we think now it is not really hard work. It's a place where I can just lay back and money will be flowing in. And she will say, well, of course, money will just come in. And you have the carte blanche to spend the money every which way. Because at the end of the day, you are the governor, then you'll run to be a senate, and then you'll be overseeing that particular county. How then will you be accountable for the malfeasance that you've done before? Briefly, so that I can go to Kigama on this.
There are a number of issues. I think the first administration, the first devolved system of government in 2013, did not have the systems put in place. What happened, it was devolution of resources without the requisite human resource. And therefore, many counties ran their business as if there was no law. And some of the governors almost acquired the position thinking that they were mini presidents in their own right. And that's why some of them were asking for being exempted from prosecution, the way a president will be exempted from prosecution for things he does in office. The second issue, which I think is important, is the allowances that report was indicating to you may not really be the main motivation for somebody to want to be in a parastatal or in a government office. That will just be a small bit of the resources they will get to cushion themselves from just daily or daily operations. The main issue is that people get into government offices with express intentions of stealing from the public. Because the same public that we respect, the Kenyan public, if you are in office as minister for so long, and you get out of that office and they see you in a matatu, they think you are stupid. because they would expect once you occupy a certain office, you must create the lagis that is required, and therefore live like a king thereafter. So the main problem is that it is our mentality as a people. We've already inculcated in our own culture that when you get into a public office, don't shame us, your relatives, your friends, by coming out without a lot of resources, ill-gotten. And that's why the ladder to leadership in Kenya today is replete with a lot of crooks, because those are the crooks who know how to get the money and make the money. Finally, I was a bit alarmed by what Professor Ogola said. The last time I was in government, if a meeting does not take place, there should be no allowance. So I don't know with this regulation, because it worries me if people can create meetings. The second issue is that if you have a sitting allowance, some sitting allowance, like if there is a meeting in the morning, like on Wednesday morning as a member of parliament, if you have a sitting in the morning and you have another sitting in the afternoon, it is seen as one sitting, continuous from morning to evening. So if there is a way nowadays that they are breaking it, it worries me. The second issue is that if parliament is sitting and you get into a committee room and you have committee business to transact, you do not get double allowance. You just get allowance as if you are in the chamber. So you are either in the chamber or you are in a committee room. So if there are some of these segments that have been created subsequently, I think it's possibly a more innovative way of looking at things. It is a digital way of looking at things. Otherwise, it was almost an abomination to make a claim for things you've not done. I remember in the 70s and partly in the 80s, some members of parliament had to run out of the country because they made false mileage claim. Those days it used to be for the weeks that parliament is sitting, you make a claim on a return trip from your constituency to Nairobi and back to your constituency. You make one claim. And if over the weekend you do not travel to your constituency, you are in Nairobi, you do not travel to your constituency, it will be false to make a claim because you did not travel. So you had to go home, whether you had a function or not, because you would be jailed because of making a claim without traveling. So I think, Dibal, my worry is that the rules have been relaxed and the regulations have been ignored or flouted. Otherwise, there is no way you, as an honorable member of parliament, you make a claim. During my time, it was about, I started with 3,400. I ended up with 100,000 towards the tail 20 years after serving for 20 years as a member of parliament. And even when I was minister, if I used ministerial car, I would not claim the following week because I would be fueling using government fuel, and I would not have used my own personal car. And it would have been a mistake for me to make a claim. These are some of the things, standard way of doing things. I think whatever people say about President Moi, he was so strict that he would jail you, and therefore we behaved because we feared being jailed for doing the wrong things.
Right. Time has ticked up to 8 o'clock right now. We'll take a short break. When we circle back, we still interrogate some of these issues as well. And why UDA will want CEOs of state firms to join UDA politics, running for those elective seats that they have within the UDA party. What does it portend? What does Mwongozo's code really stipulate? Also, some of the acts, the Public Ethic Act, what does it really stipulate in light of this? And the latest report that we have from Kenya Human Rights Commission regarding some of the allowances and the parastatals that were being abused. And there's also, it is a spawning ground for corruption as well. We circle back, we shall interrogate one of the poignant issues that is coming to the fore. And I'm just looking at Chapter 5 of the Constitution, where it talks about land, and it says land and environment. There is established the National Lands Commission. The functions of a National Lands Commission to manage public land on behalf of the national and county governments, to recommend national policy to the national government, to advise the national government on comprehensive program for the registration of title in land throughout Kenya, to conduct research related to land and use the land of natural resources, and make recommendations to appropriate authorities as well. And it goes on and on and on. There is a new bill that is coming, and that is the Lands Commission Bill 2023 that seeks now to amend what is in the Constitution to hide some of its functions from NLC and put it back to the CS in charge of land. What does that really portend when it comes to the Constitution and these amendments as well? We shall be interrogating that. Land has become a very catnip issue, emotive issue in this country lately, if we go by what we've been seeing in Mavoko as well, and Jiru and other places. We take a short break, we circle back with more. You're watching Ongozo Today, where we keep them honest.